Welcome to the String Theory of the Unexplained. I'm your host, John Ventry. Our co-host is Fred Saluga, and today's guest is Brian Seach. Fred, I want to do an update to the show we did on Once Upon a Time with the Wizard of Oz. Just a real quick update on this, because at the time we were talking about this alternative version of the Wizard of Oz story that I had never heard before. I couldn't understand where was this story. So I went out and I bought this book, Frank Baum's. It says 15 in 1, but there's 14. The book says 15. They repeated the first one twice because they got the cover wrong. 15 in 1. There's only 14. This is what the original guy wrote starting in 1900. But I'm going through this and I'm saying, where is the alternative version that we discussed? So then I bought this from a rare book site, Abe Books. Abe Books. Jack Pumpkinhead of Oz. And there's the jack-o'-lantern with a samurai sword. So I said, okay, this is 1929. The movie, I think, was what, 1934, I think? 1, 3, 2, somewhere in there, with Gone with the Wind. Whatever year, it was the same year, right? So I'm saying, what is going on? And they had all these other books like this out there. So I do some research. I finally figured this thing out. From 1900 to 1920, there were 14 Oz books written by Frank Baum, right? Then through 1939, there were 21 more that were authorized by Baum's family because he passed away. Then through 1963, there were 7 more that were written, not authorized by the family, but the same writers who wrote the previous 21 wrote 7 more. From 1972 to 2020, there were 16 more by the Wizard of Oz Club, including Wicked. The story, in 1995, there was a play and a movie. So it turns out from 1934 to 2020, there were 22 alternative Wizard of Oz books that had that other storyline, a more horror type. I mean, they were killing people, eating people. The monkeys, they were eating them up, cutting heads off. Yeah, you got to watch the episode. Okay. So it turns out there was a total of 80 Wizard of Oz books written. So all along, I'm thinking, Gone with the Wind, 1 book, right? Wizard of Oz, 1 book. Now 80. So that explained it, and I didn't know that at the time when we did that episode. And I just saw recently that they're looking to do a new movie. A remake is planned. I don't know if that was the original Wizard of Oz or the alternative one. There was one alternative Back to Oz story.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Done. Yeah. We're going to talk about this one, Stranger at the Pentagon, the Val Thor story. And I don't know if you know who, you ever hear of Kevin Smith? He had a radio show like Coast to Coast with George Norrie. Kevin Smith was the Kevin Smith Show was the first radio show I was ever on back in 07, 08, whatever it was. I was probably on the show 5 years, once a year, let's say, for 5 years. And after I did the show, you know, he worked for Interpol. He knew I was head of security at UPS. He would call me afterwards. We talked for about another 45 minutes, you know, about how to investigate and that type of stuff. And he passed away. Heavy smoker, and he basically had a heart attack, and he passed away. But he said to me, have you ever read Stranger at the Pentagon? And I said, no. He goes, buy the book. I paid a lot of money for this book. You can't find it. You know? Really? So I ended up paying a lot of money for this book, so I bought it. I could have probably gone on YouTube and watched a video about it, you know? So let's talk about Stranger at the Pentagon, right? Now, the guy who writes this, and you can't make this up, like Richard Sharp Shaver, that was his name, Sharp Shaver. Well, this guy is Dr. Frank Stranges. That's his name, and it fits the story.
The minister, right? Evangelist, minister.
Yeah, 1961, he writes this. He's an assistant deputy director of the Cal State Marshals, president of the Evangelism Crusades and Theological Seminary, president of the National Investigative Committee on UFOs, founder of the Intergalactic Federation of Planets, of which Earth became a member in July of 2005. Oh, I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
And his sources are Dr. Bird and Laura Eisenhower from her,
Right.
was that the father or the uncle? Is that the uncle? Laura Eisenhower is a niece. She's not the daughter of the president.
No, she's the daughter.
Oh, she is the daughter.
Laura is the
Okay.
daughter, yeah.
Okay. So this Val Thor guy, he's a delegate of the High Council of Venus, which again makes me suspicious. How do you live on Venus when we know now it's like 800 degrees and sulfuric acid as an atmosphere? And you got your buddy down in West Virginia.
That's what I was going to say.
Venus rising.
Yeah.
You know, but so he's a delegate, right? He's given VIP treatment at the Pentagon by Vice President Nixon.
Right.
He arrived on March 16th, 1957, 3 weeks before I was born,
Yeah.
and he left March 16th of 1960.
Right.
Exactly 3 years he was here. He was concerned with our nuclear or atomic weapons back then. He had no fingerprints.
Right.
He had six fingers,
yeah.
6 fingers, 1 lung. He could read minds. He spoke 100 languages. They would live to almost 500 years. He was 6 foot, 185 pounds, brown eyes, indestructible clothing.
Yeah, that's what I got here.
Yeah, 1200 IQ. And where did he land?
Alexandria.
Virginia.
Virginia,
Yeah.
where his ship was.
So that's where the ship. That's where the ship landed. So the source of information on this is the nephew of Admiral Richard Byrd, right? The nephew of the bird that flew over Antarctica and all of that. It's Dr. Harley Byrd, but he's a naval intelligence officer who worked on Project Blue Book.
Okay.
So now the flags go up, right?
Yep.
The red flags go up again. He said that Val lived underground on Venus because they couldn't live above the ground, right? We know that. Most ETs do live underground.
Right.
And that would explain their frailer bodies and bigger eyes because you don't have as much light, right? So they live underground. More ETs would be coming to help us. They believed in Jesus. That's a plus. Now I'm on his side. And they left on March 16, 1960. But the storyline, the criticism is, his storyline is very similar to the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, of this guy coming with these powers to help us, and get rid of the nuclear weapons, and there's kind of a little bit of religious aspect there. In The Day the Earth Stood Still, if you remember, Carpenter was the character.
Yeah.
Right? And then when he gets shot and dies, Gorth revives him.
Yeah.
Well, who was the carpenter? Jesus. Who got
I didn't think of that.
Who rose from the dead? Jesus resurrected. They follow, and the writer said that of the story.
Yeah.
He based it on the Bible. So this story is a little bit similar to that. And that was very interesting. He said the public didn't pick up on that I was mimicking the biblical story, you know? So Val, technically, he met with President Eisenhower. Now get this, it's recorded in Blue Book. A Blue Book report, 1957 Blue Book report, the Val Thor landing, and the case number, room D4 717. It's there. It's in Blue Book. This encounter is there, put there by Byrd, who worked for Blue Book.
Right.
So is it true, right? So Val offered to take Eisenhower to Venus for a meeting, but Eisenhower declined. The President of the United States is not leaving Earth, to be kidnapped. So he said he's not going. Val said they had been here a long time visiting, and they gave us fingerprints. We didn't have fingerprints.
Right.
They gave us fingerprints. Well, why did you give us fingerprints? So we can identify you on abductions. To identify you when we abduct you.
So how long have they been abducting then?
Who knows? He didn't say how long when they came. Well, if they gave us fingerprints, it's got to be a long time ago, So it's kind of creative with that. The fingerprints, instead of putting a chip, a barcode, it's your fingerprint, and that's a better barcode than anything else, Now Val he would be at the Pentagon, but then he would leave. He would create a hologram of him sleeping or sitting in a chair reading. It wasn't him, it was a hologram.
Right,
and then he
right.
would go. He'd go back to, was it Alexandria?
Alexandria.
Arlington, Alexandria, and he'd go back to his crew. and then he'd come back. So he wasn't there the whole time, but they thought he was there, you know? And he would kind of, the craft was cloaked, so nobody saw it sitting in the field, you know? He gave scientists medical treatments and vaccines, but he would not give them any technology. Okay, he would help them, but not technology.
Well, this guy that I talked to the other night said that he offered to give Eisenhower that technology, and Eisenhower refused it.
Well,
That's why he wants to come to the conference. He's hoping somebody from the college that allegedly Val Thor visited will be there.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it was probably he'd give us the technology if we gave up nuclear weapons. Just like the Eisenhower meeting in
Yeah.
'52 with the
Right.
tall whites
Yeah.
was, you know, if you give up your nuclear weapons, we will help you.
Right.
So it kind of mimicked that story. This is '61. That's the
Right.
Eisenhower
Right.
story from '52. So how much of it is the truth, right? So, you know, he offered to end poverty, disease, you know, you wouldn't have to be afraid of dying,
Right.
that type of stuff. They live a long time.
And remember, there are, you have a picture
Yeah.
right now, there are pictures of him and his three companions.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
that's the next slide.
Whether he's an alien, though, or something to be.
Well, here's the picture. That's Val Thor on the right. You see the side of his profile there. He's there with his crew of Jill, Tanya,
Yeah.
and Don. This was at a gathering at High Bridge, New Jersey, at the farm of Howard Menger. Who was Howard Menger? A famous name from UFOs as an abductee back in, in the 50s, but this took place in April, or he was abducted in April 57, Menger was abducted, right? So now, people said, let's find out who the photographer is and who are these people in the picture. They cannot find out who the photographer was.
Okay.
So nobody really knows who these four people are and the two in the background. They don't know who these people are. There's no verification of them. So now who gets involved? Phil Schneider, all right? Of Dulce fame and all of that, Phil Schneider. So Phil Schneider claims that his father met with Val Thor on the USS Eldridge, that his father had met him, and that he met him also. He said that there were 77 Venusians on Earth. They used telepathy. Nixon had asked Val about the 1952 UFOs over D.C. Val had said the world economy is not ready yet for this type of technology. He was here to help humans to find peace and love. There were many other planets with life. God created them, so it wasn't evolution or whatever. God created the life on the other planets, but the UN leaders who was involved and met with him, they wanted to keep all of this secret. So that's the Val Thor storyline, right? Just like the Shaven Mysteries, true, not true, embellished.
Well, okay, you're saying the God theory. So then that would justify what Joe Joseph says when you're abducted. If you say, in the name of Jesus, let me alone, they leave. Because they actually believe in God, because he actually created the aliens too then.
Yeah, well, but that takes it into the, the demonic, the satanic,
Right.
all of that. Because
Yeah.
if you say leave for the name of Jesus,
Yes.
like you ain't gonna leave, my dog's not gonna leave. You leave because those are demonic spirits and fallen angels is what it is. So
Maybe the evolutions are fallen angels.
well, I mean, the storyline is in both,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So Fred, I think this is episode 93, 94, I've kind of lost
Somewhere
count,
around,
it
yeah,
might be closer
95.
to 100. Through the years here, I ended up taking everything I published and I put it on one graph. And in 14 years, I published 13 publications, 10 books, 3 research papers. And how we're going to finish this up for the audience is we're going to take a tribute to Fate magazine on the 60th anniversary, the 700th issue of Fate magazine in 2008. I received this from Fate. Had a disc in there of the cover art, the pulp fiction art of all of their the best of the 700, ain't 700. So the way we're going to finish this is we're just going to play here the covers. It's going to finish up as a tribute, a dedication to Fate magazine. which is kind of fading a little bit.
Couple
you know,
issues, they're
with-
published irregularly, but they still come
maybe
out,
twice
yes.
a year.
Maybe twice, yeah.
And, you know, I guess 185,000 issues a month, and they're down to 4,000,
Oh, wow.
maybe 3,000,
Okay.
5,000. You know, so that's our episode. Anything else you want to say? Otherwise, we'll let the audience enjoy the Fate magazine covers, the best of Fate, and that's our episode. You guys good?
Yep.
Okay, that's our episode. Thank you.